Hi, I'm Steve Casely from CBT Nuggets, and welcome to this nugget focused on the first of the processes, the first of 7 processes from Prince 2. And this nugget is focused on the SU process, starting up a project, the initial brief activities needed to get a project officially approved and moving forward into the project delivery lifecycle. As I just said, this nugget, starting up a project, is the first of 7 nuggets focused on the 7 processes in the Prince 2 process model. Starting up a project, and again, my suggestion is you need to memorize these short forms, or SU, is that brief, validation. As Steve likes to say, the validation of the eureka moment, the brief validation, the project makes sense. I'm going to start off each of these 7 process nuggets with a description of the objectives, of what the process is all about, and what the outcomes or what the results or what the deliverables from the process should be. So, starting up a project is all about validating the mandate. The project has a mandate, or again, in Steve's term, that's the eureka moment. Somebody has had a brainy idea, a good idea, that if a project was undertaken, our organization, our business would be more successful, and they've jotted it down. It may be jotted down on a napkin, it may be jotted down in an email, or it may be produced into a formal document, but that is our project mandate. That's the original definition of the business expectations. Once we validate that the mandate makes sense, that there is some reason to believe that this is a justifiable project, we truly get into starting up a project and we assemble the PM team, the executive sponsor, the project manager, and we begin to assemble the people who are going to work on this phase, this process of starting up the project. And we then plan the real work, which is the initiating the stage. The initiating stage is where the true project planning happens. Starting up the project is all about validating the mandate, assembling the team, defining how much work it's going to be to get to the validation stage, to get to the plan stage, and we get the approval to proceed. And that's the key. That's the validation of the eureka moment. We have the approval to proceed. And our outcomes is the business case, or at least the business case outline. We will truly flesh out and define the business case in our next stage, which is initiating, but we're going to at least put together the outline, which is going to expand on the mandate. Ideally, the PM is going to be assigned, and by Prince 2, there is no ideally in it. The PM needs to be assigned as a prerequisite for completing starting up a project, and that is where we need to be. That's what we should strive for. But at least in my humble experience or in my prior experience, that's not always possible. There may be a period of time between starting up a project, going through initiating, and getting the project formally kicked off and going into the actual stage delivery. And sometimes it's just not possible to have the PM assigned, or at least the ultimate PM assigned. So therefore, a delegate or an alternate or a temporary PM will be assigned. So yes, an absolute PM needs to be assigned, and ideally, it's the same PM is going to take the project through the entire process model. But as a minimum, it's a temporary, it's a surrogate, it's a real project manager. It just may not be the project manager who's going to go on and deliver the project. And obviously, we're going to get a formal, and I will stress the word formal, approval to proceed. This is not just a, okay, Steve, yeah, go ahead, this is good. This is something in writing. Again, ideally, it's a formal approval in a formal document that's going to be photocopied and put in a filing cabinet for prosperity. But if your organization is a little foreign to that degree of formality, at least an email that says, Dear Steve, I'm the boss, I'm the CEO, and yes, you have approval to proceed to begin to plan or move into the initiating stage for this project. So what do we really do in starting up a project? There are 6 activities defined by Prince 2 that need to be accomplished, need to be achieved as part of starting up a project. One is appoint the executive, and that's from the business, and the project manager, or as I said, the surrogate temporary project manager, but a real project manager. It just may not be the ultimate project manager. Then we need to go through and review and capture the previous lessons learned. So this project is going to be, I'm going to say, more successful than the projects that went before it, because we're not going to repeat the same mistakes. We're probably going to make some new mistakes, but we're not going to repeat the same mistakes. We're going to define the PM team. But you're saying, well, you already defined the project manager. Yeah, but maybe this is a large, complex project, and we need more than a single project manager involved with the project. So we're going to review and analyze and understand what the total requirements for oversight for project management in the project is going to be. Then we begin to work on the business case itself. We prepare the business case outline, which is going to expand on the mandate, and it's going to flesh out the objectives for the project and begin to populate the business case, recognizing that it may be incomplete at the end of starting up, but will be fleshed out and completed in initiating. Then we select the project approach. How are we going to deliver this? Is this going to be custom development? Is this going to be a commercial product? Is this going to be a hire consultant? Hire external? Is this going to be? So what is the best approach to satisfy the business objectives? And then finally, and probably most importantly, we're going to produce a detailed plan for the initiating stage, and that's going to be presented and get approval to proceed. So in a little more detail, the first activity is appoint the executive and the project manager. This is all about identifying the business executive, the person in the business who has the term, the pain. And this is not a Prince 2 term, this is a Steve term, but I believe it's very applicable. We need to understand who in the business will benefit the most from this project. And if the person who benefits the most is on board, is committed, then we're going to move the project farther forward. And I'll give you an example. If we have the business executive who is a senior, well-respected, very seasoned business executive, and he is assigned, or she is assigned to our project, but you know what? This business executive is so seasoned that they're 8 months from retirement. And the only thing they want to do in the remaining 8 months to their retirement is relax, get ready for retirement, start worrying about what they're going to do in retirement, and the last thing they want to do is deal with a lot of problems and a lot of issues and a lot of concerns. They're not the business executive that I want. I want the person who's going to benefit from this project. I want the person who's going to have their pain eliminated assigned to my project because they're incented. They have real personal and business reasons for ensuring this project is a success. Now, one small problem with that. The person with the pain may not be senior, may not have the power and the authority, i.e., if this is a middle-level manager that has the pain and had the eureka moment and convinced the business executive, his or her business executive, then I need the person with the pain's boss, and I need the person with the pain ensuring that I have that business executive's commitment to the project. Next, to ensure that I'm getting the right person, I'm going to define the commitment. And I'm not saying, are you committed to the project? I'm saying, here's how much time and effort I need from you. On average, I need you to have 6 hours a week to spend on the project, to spend with me. Here's what I expect you to do. I expect you to attend weekly status meetings. I expect you to do this. I expect you to do that. And here's what I need you to do for me. I need you to represent this project at the senior management table. I need you to be prepared to make decisions. I need you to be prepared to help my project. So when I'm saying define the commitment, it's making sure they know what they have to do. Being a business executive on a Prince 2 project and on Steve's project isn't a cakewalk. It isn't an afternoon in the park because I expect my business executives to work, I'm going to say for me, but to work for the good of the project. So once I've defined their commitment, their time and the effort, I will then gain their acceptance. I will say, are you willing to do this? And if they can look me in the eye and say, yes, Steve, this is a truly bona fide, justified project, and yes, I will find, it's not going to be easy, but yes, I will find the 6 hours, and yes, I'll participate in your steering committee meetings, and yes, I'll take the project concerns to the executive table. I've got their acceptance. I've got their, in this case, their personal commitment to work on the project. And that business executive is key. I can't understate the importance of getting the person with the pain or the person with the pain's boss engaged, tell them what I need, and making sure they're willing to help me on the project. And with that, then we're going to identify and staff the project manager. As I say again, ideally, this is the permanent project manager that's going to take this project through to fruition. But as a minimum, we need a project manager with the knowledge and the skills to put together a reasonable plan, an appropriate plan for the type and style of project. So if this is a very large, complex project, we need a very seasoned project manager who's got experience managing large, complex projects. And if this is a simple conference room scheduling package software development, then it may well be that we can get a more junior project manager. But start to identify the key participants, and there are the two key participants, the business executive and the project manager, and gain their acceptance that they want to work on the project. Our next activity is to capture the previous lessons learned. It's a very, very important, but typically a very brief activity. Ideally, your organization has a corporate repository of best practices and a repository of reusable material, templates, samples, and so on. And ideally, your corporation has this well documented and very easily accessible, and you go to it and say, for this style of project, I'm doing a package search project versus a custom development project. Find your organizational best practices and its reusable material and use that for the basis for your project. Depending on your success and the maturity of your organization, you may need to expand that into doing a web search and looking for, again, best practices and reusable material on the web. There's lots of awesome resources out there on the web, and find the resources on the web that are from a reputable, reliable source, not some hacker in their basement or their garage, but find reputable sources out there, and not necessarily called out in Prince2 documentation, but I think you need to do some soul searching. I'm expecting you have some degree of experience as a project manager. This isn't the very first project you've ever taken on. What's worked for you? What's not worked for you? Where have been your challenge? What are the things that you have sworn to yourself that I will never make that mistake again? So go through and find out where your organization has done things good and bad. Find out what your peers in the world recommend for being more successful on this project, and do a brief soul search to make sure that you're not going to repeat the same mistakes that you have in the past. And then finally, a 3-minute task. Start a lessons learned log. At this point, it's probably going to be a blank Word document. You're going to put it into your project space. You're going to give it a title. You're probably going to create a blank table in it. But by simply starting this lessons learned log, you're enabling efficient capture of future lessons learned. And believe it or not, in my experience, simply having that log there makes you far more, I would say 200 to 300 times more likely to capture a lessons learned as soon as you've identified it, because it's easy to grab the document, open it, put the one line in the table, and close it. It's minutes of effort. But if all you're doing is sitting there at your desk saying, that's a really important lessons learned, I should capture that. Where am I going to capture it? How am I going to format it? What am I going to do with it? And by the time you've worked through the logistics of how you're going to capture that lessons learned, you probably have a new fire that you're dealing with on your project, and the lessons learned has been lost. So, as I say, take a moment or two, produce that blank shell. Hopefully you got it from a template, so there's not even any work to producing it. Get it out into your project workspace, and be prepared to populate it on a daily, continuous basis. Our third activity in starting up a project is design and appoint the project management team. As I said in my introduction, at this point in time, we have ourselves identified. We know we are the project manager to run this project. Here we're going to design the overall PM team. What are the other requirements we have for project managers? Is this extremely large? In which case I need sub-project managers or team leaders, recognizing that the average span of control for a single manager is 8 to 10 people. So as soon as your project has more than 8 to 10 people, it's time to say, this is more than my span of control. I need to bring in a team leader. I need to bring in a sub-project manager. And we begin to identify roles and responsibilities for the other PM leads on our project, sometimes based purely on size of the project. But we also have to consider there are a number of other, I'm going to say, project management roles, and there may be people who take offense by saying the quality manager is a project management role and the configuration manager is a project management role, but I'll stick to my guns. These are project oversight positions, and I believe project management is project oversight. So again, absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Prince2 expects that we will have a quality manager assigned to our project. This is the person who's going to ensure that the project is following all of our quality processes and that the end result of our project is going to be consistent with our customer's expectation of delivery. And we need a configuration manager defined so that all of the configuration management, that we do the document version management and the document storage appropriately, and that we manage all of our code components in our source code management library appropriately. These are roles, not necessarily positions. So this is a very small project. I only have 4 team members on the project. It's entirely feasible that I am the PM team. I have 4 team members reporting to me, and I am fulfilling the role of the quality manager and the configuration manager and the project manager, and I still have a reasonably manageable workday. But as the project grows in complexity, I still may only have 10 people on the project, but because the project is very complex and we have a lot of configuration items that we need to manage, one of those 10 people may be the configuration manager managing my source code repository, and I continue to fill the role of the quality manager. But as the team grows in complexity and the project grows in complexity, I may well need a separate quality manager, a separate configuration manager, and maybe even separate team leaders as my project grows to 20 to 30 to 50 to 200. And yes, it's not infeasible that we have project structures that lead up to projects of that size. Design the PM team, identify the requirements, and identify the types of roles that are going to be needed to create the complete project management team. And then we need to identify and select and get acceptance of all the candidates. Who is going to be my team leaders? Who is going to be my config manager? Who is going to be my quality manager? Make sure they understand the role that I'm expecting them to fulfill on the project, that they're excited about being a config manager or they're excited about being a team leader, and get their acceptance, get their commitment to be on this exciting project with Steve. And a last statement, don't forget about project administration. A lot of project managers don't necessarily build in or don't account for the level of effort required for filing timesheets, for doing basic project administration. And if it's possible to get a project admin person, and I mean admin as in administration, clerical support, if you want to use that terminology, assigned to your project for very large projects, it's a very, very cost-effective way to free up time for your PM team to focus on PM activities and allow a much lower cost project administration person to work on the mundane, if I can use that term without insulting anyone, activities around project administration. And next activity is prepare business case outline. And although I'm going through these in this nugget in a serial fashion, which is the only way I can go through them in the nugget series, these are not serial activities. In all likelihood, in any one given day in your startup of a project, you will likely be doing all 6 of these activities in any one day. So again, these are really all parallel activities. I'm simply presenting them serially. As I said, if I tried to present them in parallel, I'm not sure this nugget would be very understandable. But again, just bear in mind, do not expect that you will go through these in a pure serial fashion. Prepare the business case outline. It starts the development of the business case. We're truly going to expand and create the business case in our next stage, which is initiating the project. But we need to prepare the focus for what the business case is going to be. Basically, we're going to expand on that project mandate, and we're going to develop the outline, the skeleton of the who, the what, the how, the when, and the wheres of the project expectations, of our business sponsors' expectations for the project. And often the expansion of the project mandate is used for another Prince2 term, which is creating the project description. Who, what, when, where, and how. Sounds like we're a reporter trying to create a news story for TV or the newspaper. And effectively, that's what we're doing in starting up the project. We're interviewing the business executive, and we're understanding what it is that they want, when and how they want it delivered, and what the business expectations are going to be. And I don't think I need to spend a lot of time on the cost justification. We spent a lot of time already in the series talking about how important it is to have all projects fully cost justified, where we have the benefits, hopefully in a monetary fashion, or at least the benefits well documented and in the intangible fashion to justify the business expenditure on the project. Will our organization be better off as a result of investing the time and the money to complete this project? And with the cost justification in hand, we then validate the funding. Business executive, boss, does it make sense? Based on this cost justification, should we be investing our scarce corporate resources, our scarce corporate dollars, into this project? Is this the very best place that we can be investing our time, our resources, our humans, our developers? Is this the right project to be working on? Which effectively is going to give us our approval to proceed to the next stage, which is initiation. And as I said, a Prince2 term you should be aware of is, in my humble opinion, at least fairly synonymous with the business case outline, is the expansion of the project mandate to be a more complete definition of the project itself. Our second last activity has a bit of a mouthful of a title. It's select the project approach and assemble the project brief. So in brief, what are we talking about? The project brief, again, often synonymous with the business case outline, is the expansion of the mandate to define all of the stakeholders that are involved with the project, all of the objectives for the project. What is the scope? What it is that the project needs to do. And I've got not in here because in my humble experience, creating a good quality scope statement is an awful lot of work, because it's really hard to truly articulate the project needs to do this, and it needs to do this, and it needs to do this, and it needs to do this, and we're going to come up with a very comprehensive list. And as we attempt to create this comprehensive list, we begin to worry about, well, what have we missed? Are there 3 more bullets that I've missed? And chances are, yeah, you're absolutely right. There are 3 more bullets, or maybe 10 more bullets that you've missed, simply because it's not possible to ever envision all of the scope statements at one time when you're in starting up the project. So I find it's often easier. Yes, you still have to do the scope. You still need to define what the project needs to do, but often you can eliminate some of those fears of what have I missed by saying, and this project will not do this, and this project will not do that. So as you develop this very comprehensive list of the project will do all of these, it will, evaluate the inventory. It will determine the location in the warehouse. It will determine the suitability of the product for sale, and so on and so on and so on. It will not generate picking documents. It will not generate shipping invoices. So all of those things that could be considered associated with the scope of the project, that if one was to truly use their imagination, they could say, well, Steve, of course your project should be doing the picking slips, and of course it should be doing the shipping invoices. Yeah, in a good world, yeah, I could see how you would envision that I should be doing that. So therefore, I'm going to say, but I'm not going to do that. And we're going to present that, and we're going to get the acceptance that we're going to do all of these, and we're not going to do any of these. So again, just consider the not aspect as your best friend for creating an effective scope statement. We're going to talk about all the interfaces. This project needs to interface with the general ledger. It needs to interface with human resources. It needs to interface with our supplier system. It needs to interface with our customer system, and so on and so on. So it's define all of those interface points to the system, and what are the expectations? What is going to make the business happiest? Do they have constraints? This must be completed in time for our next busy season. This must be completed in time for the next corporate audit. This must be completed so we're clearly articulating very specific expectations, almost success criteria that we're going to get from the business. And that's our project brief. As I say, it's the expansion of the mandate, and I really believe it is often synonymous with the project case or business case outline, but this is a term you're going to see again in Prince 2, probably show up in your exam, so be aware of what the project brief is. And then lastly, and this is a bit of a combined activity because it really has 2 separate thoughts in it, is to define the project approach. What's the project environment? What tools, what support, what infrastructure do we need to make this project work? And what type of solution are we going to use? Again, is this custom development? Is this going to be a package? Are we going to find a consultant or an external firm that has the skills to do the custom development for us? How are we going to go about satisfying the project brief expectations? And what are the specific skill requirements? What do we need to have in hand in our project team to make this project approach work successfully? And finally, our last activity, and this one truly is not as parallel as all of the other activities, is the finalization of Startup the Project. And the finalization of Startup the Project, we plan the initiation stage. So now that we've done all of the other work, we have our project brief, we have our project approach, we have our outline, we have our project team defined, and so on and so on and so on. We're going to truly identify all of the tasks that we need for the next stage, which is the initiation stage. So we're going to define the complete WBS, the work breakdown structure, all of the tasks that the team needs to do to complete the full comprehensive plan for the project. And with those tasks, it's going to allow us to identify the cost and the schedule with the team that we've identified to plan the rest of the project. And we're going to present that, and we're going to get approval to proceed. And as soon as we get the approval to proceed, we move into our next Prince2 process, which is plan the initiation stage, which is also our next nugget. This concludes our discussion on the first Prince2 process is start up the project. And again, the acronym is SU. There are 6 activities in this particular process. Appoint the business executive and the project manager. Find the person, and I'm going to continue to use my term, the pain. Find the person who has the most to benefit from this project being a success. Hopefully they have the power and the authority to be our project executive. And if they don't have the power and authority, we need them to convince their boss, who has the power and authority to be our project executive, to make the pain go away. And we need to identify ourselves, the project manager, who's going to be responsible for working through and delivering the project. We're going to make sure we're doing this project in the most efficient fashion possible. We're going to review our corporate lessons learned. We're going to review any lessons learned for similar style projects that we can find in the web. We're going to do a bit of a soul search to make sure that we're going to carry forward all of those things that we vowed to ourselves we would never repeat. And we're going to find any reusable artifacts. And we're going to ensure that our project doesn't make all of the mistakes of our peers before us, and we're going to deliver the most successful project that's ever been delivered. We're going to define the PM team. Do we need a quality manager? Do we need a configuration manager? Do we need team leads because the scope of control on this project is larger than we ourselves can take on? We're going to define the team, we're going to identify the team, and we're going to secure their commitment to work on the project. And then we're going to begin to define the project itself. We're going to prepare the business case outline, which is going to expand on the mandate. Going to work on this thing called a project brief. And this thing called a project description. Or as Steve often does it, just combine them into the business case outline itself. But you need to be very aware of these terms because I would expect you will see these terms specifically called out on your exam. And in the business case, the project brief, the project description, we're going to find the who, the what, the when, the where, the how, the whys of what it is that the project executive, the business executive, wants this project to accomplish. And this is all done in business words. With a full understanding of what the business wants, we're going to select the project approach. Is this going to be delivered via custom development, buying a piece of software, finding an external consultant? What is going to be the very best way? What do we need in terms of our project infrastructure to support this project? And then finally, knowing exactly what we need to do, we're going to prepare a detailed plan for the initiation stage. We're going to cost and schedule that plan. We're going to present it to management, and we're going to get approval. Our big red tick box, well, in this case, a blue tick box that says, Steve, you've done a good job on starting up the project. This project makes a lot of sense. Please proceed to the next stage and plan the initiation. This concludes our nugget on the first Prince2 process, starting up a project. I hope this module was informative for you, and thank you very much for viewing.